Aguila. Hi movie review lovers friends. Today I am going to describe the movie story of the Aguila. Now let's talk about it. As we know that the Aguila, translation Eagle, is a 1980 Philippine period drama film written, produced, and directed by Eddie Romero, touted as the biggest event in local movie history and the biggest Filipino film ever made. It features an ensemble cast top-billed by Fernando Poe Jr. Flashbacks encompass the history of the Philippines as well as the life story of the elderly Daniel Aguila. The Aguila family gathers to celebrate Daniel's 88th birthday, but the old man is nowhere to be seen. He has been missing for a decade. Suspecting that his father is in Mindanao, one of his sons takes off for that region in a determined search. Along the way, his memories of the nation and his father's life tell the story of 80 tumultuous years of personal and historical development. In 1980, the influential and affluent Aguila family celebrate the 88th birthday of their missing and long-presumed dead patriarch, Daniel Aguila. His son, Mari, receives news that Daniel is alive in the provinces. Mari, a business tycoon and former senator, combs the countryside in search of his father. In the course of his search, the Aguila family history is unraveled. It all begins when Daniel's father, Artemio, an officer in the Revolutionary Army, dies by treachery. His mother, Isabel Teodoro, is raped by that same traitor, Simeon Garrido, and later marries him for convenience. As a young soldier accompanying Simeon to Mindanao, Daniel again becomes witness to injustice. Simeon and some Americans ruthlessly take away Muslim tribal lands. Daniel's life is one of complexity, of human emotions and relationships. His affair with a Muslim woman, Farida, results in a love child, Osman. He marries a lawyer named Sally, Mari's mother, who later falls ill and dies. He also discovers the incestuous liaison between Simeon and Lillian, who in turn unsuccessfully attempts to seduce him. Daniel's experiences during World War II and with the American-controlled post-war government only increase his mounting disenchantment with life and society. Mari's amoral political ambitions and his grandson Raul's activist stance drives him further into disillusionment. Finally, Daniel heeds his longing for peace and leaves. Mari's journey ends when he finds Daniel in an Ida village in Bohol, where Daniel has found serenity, far from the maddening machinations and injustices committed by a civilized society. The film had a budget of 5 million Cuban pesos and boasted 12 stars, 60 production staff and crewmen and 7,000 extras. The film was shot in 120 different locations. 5. The film's art director, Mel Cayonglo, built a Magdawang camp and an Ilongit village on the hills of Tanay and an Ida village in Los Baños. Cayonglo had 3 assistants, 2 setmen and 10 carpenters to help in this work. Cayonglo also designed sets for an 1897 evening in Binondo, a Muslim waterfront in 1918 Nasugbu, Batangas, a courthouse in 1924 Magdalena, Laguna, a roaring 20s cabaret in Makati, a Japanese garrison in Lumban, Laguna, and other settings. 5. The film took 100 days to shoot the 204 pages of script written for it, the latter having been written over a 2-year period. 5. Actress Rio Locsin was originally cast to play Hook Commander Dewada but was replaced by Chanda Romero, director Eddie Romero's niece. 6. When she failed to show up on her first shooting day. 5. The production was infamously marred by tensions between the crew. Among the reported incidents of tensions flaring up involved Eddie Romero's frequent butting of heads with Mel Cayonglo. 7. Romero likewise clashed with set decorator, and now screenwriter, Raquel Villavicencio over unreasonable production demands. 7. Eventually, the differences among the crew members got so unbearable for the film's cinematographer, Mike de Leon, that he walked out on the project altogether. 5. However, while tensions were building between members of the crew, no such tensions were reported among the actors and Romero himself. Romero was described as being a cool director, not having been angered by the actors on the set. 7. The lone exception of Romero being angered by an actor on the set is when he threatened to renounce his niece, Chanda, if she could not do her kissing scene with Christopher de Leon right. 6. Romero was notoriously late on the set, but the actors would arrive even later than Romero himself. 5. Despite this, however, Romero tolerated the different personalities between the actors and allowed them to bond, usually over meals in between shoots. 7. Film director and scribe Nick Diocampo points out that the film may be examined to better appreciate the value of the family as a basic institution of the society. 12. The family as a basic institution of the society was enshrined in Section 4, Art. 2 of the 1973 Constitution, the law in force at the time of the film's release, which not only recognizes the family as such but also endeavors to protect and strengthen the same. The same provision was carried over to the 1987 Constitution, where an entire section is devoted to the family. In the film, family life in the Philippines is examined through historical lenses as it depicts the evolution of the Filipino family throughout history and how its values are formed and/or changed. 12. The family is likewise peered into through the eyes of Daniel Aguila as he has lived through an ever-evolving and ever-growing family, first having grown fatherless and then having a difficult relationship with his mother, Isabel, because of her decision to remarry a man Daniel detests, a choice which was itself imposed upon Isabel by her own parents. Then as a family man himself, how Daniel copes with his own children who has views opposite to his and whose views shape the paths they chose to take in life. The film likewise explores alienation within one's own family, as seen in the experiences of Daniel, Osman, Mari and Lillian, who all feel like they're outsiders within their own family at certain points in the film. Another point the film touches upon is how the family shapes its members, specifically how familial experience molded Daniel Aguila as a person. This film has been cited as an unconventional FBJ movie as it shows FBJ as Daniel Aguila being vulnerable, a departure from the typical roles that show Poe as an infallible and incorruptible conquering hero. 5. In the film, Daniel's failings as a man and as head of the family is shown, and it examines how these define Daniel as a person and how it influenced the Aguila family. 12. History and society. Being under the genre of historical drama, the film depicts how values, not only in the family but in the larger Philippine society, evolves. 12. It shows how Daniel and his family and the values they hold are a product of their times, how their choices are informed by the prevailing values and trends of a given period. 12. This is exemplified in the character arc of Mari, who, in entering the political arena, becomes swept by its corruption and inevitably becomes part of the machinery that he once sought to change. This is likewise shown in the arc of Raul, who is driven to suicide because of the realization that his hero and mentor, Margot, was willing to give up their cause for personal reasons, much like Cadio and Basilio before her. Alienation again takes the spotlight as Daniel is driven into abandoning his family and choosing to live in both Cotabato and Bohol to escape a society that has become more and more unfamiliar to him. In both communities, he helps its residents and teaches them self-reliance. Nationalism. As with Ganito Kami Noon, Panokeo Nanon, the film examines what the social ills that pervades Philippine society and how said problems merely evolve but are never solved. 12. This pervasive problem is exemplified by the character of Simeon Garrido, who is willing to sell his loyalty insofar as the new colonial masters are willing to serve his personal interests. Much later in the film, Mari's entry into politics leads him to do as the Romans do and engage in corruption to the detriment of the Filipino people. Similarly, the character arc of Margot shows how those claiming to fight for nationalism can be corrupted when personal interests is thrown into the picture. Throughout the film, nationalism is a constant frustration for Daniel, 12, who has seen how Filipinos are pitted by the Philippines colonizers against each other, how those who fought for the independence of the Philippines are instead treated like criminals, and how those who collaborated with the enemies are given preferred positions. Daniel, in 1945, even laments if his service in the war ultimately redounded to the benefit of but a few, instead of that of the Filipino people. In 2019, ABS-CBN Film Restoration Project and FPJ Productions digitally restored the film, which required 3,000 hours of digital preservation, 14, subsequently. The digitally restored film has been screened at the Up Film Center as part of the Up Film Institute's commemoration of FPJ's 80th birthday, 15, in the same year. The digitally restored version was screened at the 15th C1 Originals in 2024. FTCP screened its period drama version during the PFAM on September 1st at the Manila Metropolitan Theater. The common name for certain large birds of prey within the family of the Accipitridae. While on a genetic level, only the subfamily Aquiline comprises true eagles, many other species are commonly referred to as eagles, such as the bald eagle, and the term generally carries no taxonomic weight. Most of the 68 species of eagles are from Eurasia and Africa, one outside this area. Just 14 species can be found, 2 in North America, 9 in Central and South America, and 3 in Australia. Eagles are not a natural group, but denote essentially any kind of bird of prey large enough to hunt, sizable, about 50 centimeters long or more overall, vertebrates. Etymology. The word eagle is borrowed into English from Old French aigle, ultimately from Latin aquila. It is cognate with terms such as French aigle, Portuguese aguila, and Spanish agila. 2. Historically, the native English term for eagle was ern, Old English, ern, derived from Proto-Germanic *garnas, and thus cognate with other synonymous words in Germanic languages, such as German aar and Dutch orend, Swedish orn and Gothic era. The term ern or ern is still used in modern English in reference to some larger species of eagle, in particular the fish eagles. While some ornithologists may favor this term as a way to distinguish fish eagles from true eagles, all species of fish eagle, such as the bald eagle and white-tailed eagle, are still commonly referred to as eagles. Description. Eagles are large, powerfully built birds of prey with heavy heads and beaks. Even the smallest eagles, such as the booted eagle, Hyraetus pinnatus, which is comparable in size to a common buzzard, buteo, or red-tailed hawk, B. Jamaicensis, have relatively longer and more evenly broad wings and more direct, faster flight, despite the reduced size of their aerodynamic feathers. Most eagles are larger than any other raptors, apart from some vultures. The smallest species of eagle is the Great Nicobar serpent eagle, Spilornis clausi, at 450 g, 1 pound, and 40 centimeters, 16 in. The largest species are discussed below. Like all birds of prey, eagles have very large hooked beaks for ripping flesh from their prey, strong, muscular legs, and powerful talons. The beak is typically heavier than that of most other birds of prey. Eagles' eyes are extremely powerful. It is estimated that the wedge-tailed eagle has a visual acuity twice that of a typical human, 3, 4, 5. This acuity enables eagles to spot potential prey from a very long distance. This keen eyesight is primarily attributed to their extremely large pupils, which ensure minimal diffraction, scattering, of the incoming light. Like most diurnal raptors, eagles have little ability to see ultraviolet light. 6. The female of all known species of eagles is larger than the male. 7, 8. Eagles normally build their nests, called eyries, in tall trees or on high cliffs. Many species lay 2 eggs, but the older, larger chick frequently kills its younger sibling once it is hatched. The parents take no action to stop the killing. 9, 10. It is said, by whom, that eagles fly above clouds, but this is not true. Citation needed. Eagles fly during storms and glide from the wind's pressure. This saves the bird's energy. Due to the size and power of many eagle species, they are ranked at the top of the food chain as apex predators in the avian world. The type of prey varies by genus. The Haliaeetus and Ichthyophaga eagles prefer to capture fish, though the species in the former often capture various animals, especially other water birds, and are powerful kleptoparasites of other birds. The snake and serpent eagles of the genera Cercidas, Pterothopus, and Spilornis predominantly prey on the great diversity of snakes found in the tropics of Africa and Asia. The eagles of the genus Aquila are often the top birds of prey in open habitats, taking almost any medium-sized vertebrate they can catch. Where Aquila eagles are absent, other eagles, such as the Buteyonine black-chested buzzard eagle of South America, may assume the position of top raptorial predator in open areas. Many other eagles, including the species-rich genus Spizzitis, live predominantly in woodlands and forests. These eagles often target various arboreal or ground-dwelling mammals and birds, which are often unsuspectingly ambushed in such dense, knotty environments. Hunting techniques differ among the species and genera, with some individual eagles having engaged in quite varied techniques based on their environment and prey at any given time. Most eagles grab prey without landing and take flight with it, so the prey can be carried to a perch and torn apart. 11. The bald eagle is noted for having flown with the heaviest load verified to be carried by any flying bird, since one eagle flew with a 6.8 kilograms, 15 pounds, mule deer fawn. 12. 13. However, a few eagles may target prey considerably heavier than themselves. Such prey is too heavy to fly with, thus, it is either eaten at the site of the kill or taken in pieces back to a perch or nest. Golden and crowned eagles have killed ungulates weighing up to 30 kilograms, 66 pounds, and a martial eagle even killed a 37 kilograms, 82 pounds, duiker, 7 to 8 times heavier than the preying eagle. 11. 67 to 68. 14. Authors on birds David Allen Sibley, Pete Dunn, and Clay Sutton described the behavioral difference between hunting eagles and other birds of prey thus. In this case, the bald and golden eagles as compared to other North American raptors. 15. An eagle named in honor of Abraham Lincoln and was the mascot of 8th Wisconsin Infantry Regiment at the time of the U.S. Centennial. They have at least one singular characteristic. It has been observed that most birds of prey look back over their shoulders before striking prey, or shortly thereafter. Predation is, after all, a two-edged sword. All hawks seem to have this habit, from the smallest kestrel to the largest ferruginous, but not the eagles. Among the eagles are some of the largest birds of prey. Only the condors and some of the Old World vultures are markedly larger. It is regularly debated, according to whom, which should be considered the largest species of eagle. They could be measured variously in total length, body mass, or wingspan. Different lifestyle needs among various eagles result in variable measurements from species to species. For example, many forest-dwelling eagles, including the very large harpy eagle, have relatively short wingspans, a feature necessary for being able to maneuver in quick, short bursts through densely forested habitats. 11. Eagles in the genus Aquila, found almost exclusively in open country, are noted for their ability to soar and have relatively long wings for their size. 11. These lists of the top 5 eagles are based on weight, length, and wingspan, respectively. Unless otherwise noted by reference, the figures listed are the median reported for each measurement in the Guide Raptors of the World. 16, in which only measurements that could be personally verified by the authors were listed. The eagles are generally distributed in all types of habitats and nearly all parts of the world. The birds can be found in northern tundra to tropical rainforests and deserts. In North America, bald eagles and golden eagles are very common. Eutriorchus, subfamily Gypaetini or Circatini. Despite filling the niche of a snake eagle, genetic studies suggest that the Madagascar serpent eagle, Eutriorchus, is not related to them. 24. Over several decades, a great deal of research has been done on the snake eagle's diet, which is mainly made up of reptiles, especially snakes. When it comes to catching snakes, it is generally accepted that the bird exhibits generalist feeding behavior, which means it does not hunt down specific types of snakes, but rather feeds on them depending on their availability in the wild. 28. Harpy eagles. Harpy eagles, 22, or giant forest eagles, 21, are large eagles that inhabit tropical forests. The group contains 2 to 6 species, depending on the author. Although these birds occupy similar niches and have traditionally been grouped, they are not all related. The solitary eagles are related to the blackhawks and the Philippine eagle to the snake eagles. The sculpture of eagle at the top of the fountain at Plac Orla Bialego in Szczecin, Poland. In Britain before 1678, eagle referred specifically to the golden eagle, with the other native species, the white-tailed eagle, being known as ern. The modern name, golden eagle, for Aquila crassidos was introduced by the naturalist John Ray. 29. The village of Eagle in Lincolnshire, England, has nothing to do with the bird. Its name is derived from the Old English words for oak and wood. Compare Oakley. 30. Religion and spirituality. Representation of an eagle at Rio Carnival, 2014. Garuda, the Vahana, mount of Vishnu, depicted with an eagle's beak and wings. In the ancient Sumerian mythology, the mythical king Edna was said to have been carried into heaven by an eagle. 31. Classical writers such as Lucan and Pliny the Elder claimed that the eagle was able to look directly at the sun, and that they forced their fledglings to do the same. Those that blinked would be cast from the nest. This belief persisted until the medieval era. 32. The eagle is the patron animal of the ancient Greek god Zeus. In particular, Zeus was said to have taken the form of an eagle in order to abduct Ganymede, and there are numerous artistic depictions of the eagle Zeus bearing Ganymede aloft, from classical times up to the present. See illustrations in the Ganymede mythology, page 33. Eagles appear metaphorically in many translations of the Old Testament. God is spoken of as carrying Israel on eagle's wings in Exodus 19 verse 4, Isaiah 40 verse 31 compares those who wait on the Lord to flying eagles, and Psalm 103 mentions renewing one's youth as the eagle. In explaining this rejuvenation, Augustine of Hippo says in his commentary on the Psalms that eagles' beaks overgrow as they age, and that they break them against rocks to restore them. 34. The translation, however, is uncertain. The word in the Hebrew can also be translated vulture. 35, and is listed alongside specific kinds of vulture in Leviticus' discussion of unclean animals. The eagle is also often used in Christian iconography to represent the Gospel of John. 36, and eagle-shaped lecterns are common in Anglican and some Roman Catholic churches. 37. The eagle was believed to be able to look directly into the sun in the same way that the Gospel of John looks directly at Jesus' divinity, and the great distances the eagle flies represent the spread of the gospel to the ends of the earth. The United States Eagle Feather Law stipulates that only individuals of certifiable Native American ancestry enrolled in a federally recognized tribe are legally authorized to obtain eagle feathers for religious or spiritual reasons. 38. In Canada, the poaching of eagle feathers for the booming U.S. market has sometimes resulted in the arrests of First Nations persons for the crime. 39. The Moche people of ancient Peru worshipped the eagle and often depicted eagles in their art. 40. The golden eagle was sacred to the Aztec god Huitzilopochtli, while the harpy eagle was sacred to Quetzalcoatl. Eagles are an exceptionally common symbol in heraldry, being considered the king of birds in contrast to the lion, the king of beasts. Whereas the lion, e.g., England, usually represents authority, the eagle is the symbol of power. They are particularly popular in Germanic countries such as Austria, due to their association with the Holy Roman Empire. The eagle of the Holy Roman Empire was two-headed, supposedly representing the two divisions, east and west, of the Old Roman Empire. This motif, derived from the Byzantine, Eastern Roman, Empire, was also adopted by the Russian Empire and is still featured in the flag of Albania. The Roman eagle was preceded by the eagle of Ptolemaic Egypt and the Achaemenid Empire. In the coat of arms of Kotka, Finland, the eagle is depicted carrying an anchor and the caduceus on its feet. Heraldic eagles are most often found displayed, i.e. with their wings and legs extended. They can also occur close, i.e. with their wings folded, or rising, i.e. about to take flight. The heads, wings, and legs of eagles can also be found independently. Eagles symbolize strength, courage, and independence, and are commonly found in the heraldry of many nations across the world. Albania, Andorra, Armenia, Austria, Dagestan, Egypt, Germany, Ghana, Indonesia, Iraq, Jordan, Kazakhstan, Mexico, Montenegro, Nigeria, the Philippines, Poland, Palestine, Panama, Russia, Romania, Serbia, South Sudan, Somaliland, Syria, the United States of America, Yemen, Zambia, and Zimbabwe are the nations whose coats of arms feature an eagle. The eagle's continuing significance and worldwide appeal as a forceful symbol in national identity and imagery is demonstrated by its widespread usage. Bohol, Tagalog pronunciation, Bohol, officially the province of Bohol, Cebuano, Provincia sa Bohol, Tagalog, Lalawigan ng Bohol, is an island province of the Philippines located in the central Visayas region. Consisting of the island itself and 75 minor surrounding islands, it is home to Boholano people. Its capital is Tagbilaran, the province's largest city. With a land area of 4,821 square kilometers, 1,861 square miles, and a coastline 261 kilometers, 162 miles long, Bohol is the 10th largest island of the Philippines. The province of Bohol is a first-class province divided into 3 congressional districts, comprising 1 component city and 47 municipalities. It has 1,109 barangays. The province is a popular tourist destination with its beaches and resorts. The Chocolate Hills, numerous mounds of brown-colored limestone formations, are the most popular attraction. The formations can be seen by land, climbing the highest point, or by air via ultralight air tours. Panglao Island, located just southwest of Tagbilaran, is famous for its diving locations and is routinely listed as one of the top 10 diving locations in the world. Numerous tourist resorts and dive centers dot the southern beaches. The Philippine tarsier, among the world's smallest primates, is indigenous to the island. It was the home province of Carlos P. Garcia, the 8th President of the Republic of the Philippines, 1957 to 1961, who was born in Talabon, Bohol. On October 15, 2013, Bohol was devastated by a 7.2 magnitude earthquake whose epicenter was 6 kilometers, 3.7 miles, south of Sagbayan. The earthquake, which also hit southern Cebu, claimed 222 lives altogether and injured 374 people. It also destroyed or damaged a number of Bohol's heritage churches, 12. In 2023, Bohol Island was designated as a UNESCO Global Geopark, the first in the Philippines, 14. Bohol is also the province with the most towns in the Philippines, totaling 47 towns and 1 component city, Tagbilaran. Etymology: Bohol is accordingly derived from the local word boawel, a kind of tree that flourished on the island. Similar to Nahuatl, the H in the middle was used to transcribe a glottal stop, which is a common phoneme in the languages of the Philippines. The original name survives as Bull, a barangay or village in Tagbilaran City, where Miguel Lopez de Legazpi supposedly landed. 15. History. Further information. History of the Philippines. Early history. Late Metal Age to Protohistoric Period, 3000 BC. The region of southeastern Bohol, particularly Cogtong Bay and Candijay, and the Anda Peninsula are known as the cradle of civilization of Bohol from archaeological findings of pre-colonial petroglyphs and ancient bodies from burial sites, which were housed in boat-shaped wooden coffins. Boat coffin burial has been found prevalent in Mindanao, Palawan, Negros, Panay, Marinduque, and Masbate, as well as throughout Southeast Asia in Borneo and Vietnam. 16. Today, local healers and shaman still practice Pagdawada rituals, or offerings to the spirits for good fortune, located in Lamanok Point in Anda. 16. The wooden boat coffins are estimated to date back 6,000 years ago from the Metal Age to the Protohistoric period. The National Museum of the Philippines has excavated and recorded 9 local caves for preservation. 17. Human remains found in southeastern Bohol also contained artificially modified crania, or a form of head binding, practiced by ancient communities throughout history. 16. Unfortunately, theft and extraction of sacred burial sites of human remains by U.S. universities occurred during the American colonial era, particularly conducted by the University of Michigan and Bucknell University in the 1920s. The University of Michigan has up to 22 human remains taken from Carmen and the Bini Bohol, 1819, 12th to 16th century. Icon. This section needs additional citations for verification. Please help improve this article by adding citations to reliable sources in this section. Unsourced material may be challenged and removed. February 2020. Learn how and when to remove this message. Further information. Boawel. a drawing from the Boxer Codex depicting the Pintados. In the early 17th century, Father Ignacio Alcina recorded that a certain Datang Samanga of Ladywood the princess, Bugbung Humasinum, of Bohol, and married her after raiding imperial China and afterwards were the precursors of the people there. 20. In 1667, Father Francisco Combs, in his Historia de Mindanao, mentioned that at one time in their history, the people of the Pangao invaded Bohol and subsequently imposed their economic and political dominance in the area. They considered the previous inhabitants of the islands as their slaves by reason of war, as witnessed for example by how Datu Pagwaya, one of the rulers of Panglao, considered Datu Sikatuna as his vassal and relative. 21. The invasion of Bohol by the people of Pangao ushered Bohol. Bohol prospered under the reign of the two brother rulers of Panglao, Datu Dalazin and Datu Pagwaya, with trade links established with neighboring Southeast Asian countries, particularly with the Sultanate of Ternate. The flourishing of trade is owed to its strategic location along the busy trading channels of Cebu and Butuan. For other countries such as Ternate to gain access to the busy trade ports of the Visayas, they need to first forge diplomatic ties with the Bohol kingdom. Relations between the Sultanate of Ternate and Bohol soured when the Ternatean Sultan learned the sad fate of his emissary and his men who were executed by the two ruling chieftains of Bohol as punishment for abusing one of the concubines. Thus, in 1563, the Ternatans attacked Bohol. 20 Jogas deceitfully posing as traitors were sent by the Sultan of Ternate to attack Bohol. 22. Caught unaware. The inhabitants of Bohol could not defend themselves against the Ternatan raiders who were also equipped with sophisticated firearms like muskets and arquebus provided by the Portuguese, still unknown to Boholanos. Thousands of Boholanos lost their lives in this conflict, including Pagwaya's brother Datu Dalazin. After the raid, Datu Pagwaya, who was left as the sole reigning chief of the island, decided to abandon Bohol together with the rest of the freemen, as they considered Bohol Island unfortunate and accursed. They settled in the northern coast of the island of Mindanao, where they established the Dapitan settlement. 23. Bohol is derived from the word boho or bohol. 6. The island was the seat of the first international treaty of peace and unity between the native king Datu Sikatuna and Spanish conquistador Miguel López de Legazpi on March 16, 1565, through a blood compact alliance known today by many Filipinos as the Sandugo. 3 of the Spanish-era churches in Bohol, from top to bottom: Loay Church, Loon Church Interior, Lobak Convent Entrance. The earliest significant contact of the island with Spain occurred in 1565. On March 16, 1565, a Spanish explorer named Miguel López de Legazpi arrived in Bohol seeking spices and gold. After convincing the native chieftains that they were not Portuguese, who raided the islands of Mactan in 1521, Legazpi made a peace pact with Datu Sikatuna. This pact was signified with a Sandugo, blood compact, between the two men. 25. This event, simply called the Sandugo, one blood, is celebrated in Bohol every year during the Sandugo festival. The Sandugo or blood compact is also depicted on Bohol's provincial flag and the Bohol. 2 significant revolts occurred in Bohol during the Spanish era. One was the Tamblot uprising in 1621, led by Tamblot, a Babalan. This revolt met with reprisals from the Spanish forces in Cebu, who on January 6, 1635, under orders by Wanda Alcarado, the alcalde mayor of Cebu, a force of 50 Spanish and 1,000 Visayan troops, battled the rebels and settled in Bohol. 27. Philippine-American War, 1899–1902. After the United States defeated Spain in the Spanish-American War, the U.S. bought the entire Philippine Islands. However, under the newly proclaimed independent government established by General Emilio Aguinaldo, which was not recognized by the U.S., Bohol was governed as a gobierno de canton. During the resulting Philippine-American War, American troops peacefully took over the island in March 1899–30. However, in September 1900, Colonel Pedro Sampson led 2,000 in rebellion, due to the harsh treatment imparted by these troops and the destruction they caused. 30-31. In response to the Samson Uprising, the U.S. forces pursued a scorched earth policy and burned down 20 out of the 35 towns of Bohol, especially southeastern area of towns such as Dwara, Jagna, and Kandajay, where whole Barangi villages were burnt down in search of freedom fighters resisting U.S. invasion to the newly independent Philippines. 32. In Jagna, Philippine guerrillas led by Captain Gregorio Gayo Casinas planned to overtake an American garrison. Unfortunately, the local mayor had disclosed their plans to U.S. troops, and this resulted in the Lonoy Massacre, or Battle of Lonoy, which U.S. troops ambushed and killed 406 Filipino soldiers, while 3 Americans were killed. General Hughes led a campaign of repression in October 1901, destroying a number of towns and threatening in December 1901 to burn Tagbilaran if the rebels did not surrender. 30. Pantaleon E. Del Rosario then negotiated the rebel to surrender. 30. At about the same period, on October 20, 1901, Bohol was organized. 33. As a province under the provisions of the Provincial Government Act of the Philippine Commission. 2 years later, some of its towns were consolidated, reducing its 35 municipalities to 32. 34. World War II, Japanese occupation, 1942 to 1945. Japanese troops landed in Tagbilaran on May 17, 1942. Boholanos struggled in a guerrilla resistance against the Japanese forces. Bohol was later liberated by local guerrillas and the Filipino and American troops who landed on 11 April 1945. 35. A plaque placed on the port of Tagbilaran commemorating the liberation raids. 1,172 officers and men of the 3rd Battalion of the 164th Infantry Regiment of the Americal Division under the command of Lieutenant Colonel William H. Considine landed at the Tagbilaran Insular Wharf at 7 o'clock in the morning of April 11, 1945. The convoy taking the Filipino and American Liberation Forces to Bohol consisted of a flotilla of 6 landing ships, medium LSM, 6 landing craft, infantry LCI, 2 landing craft, medium LCM, and 1 landing ship, medium rocket LSM-R. Upon arrival, the reinforced battalion combat team advanced rapidly to the east and northeast with the mission of destroying all hostile forces in Bohol. Motor patrols were immediately dispatched by Colonel Considine, task force commander, and combed the area to the north and east, approximately halfway across the island, but no enemies were found during the reconnaissance. Finally, an enemy group of undetermined strength was located to the north of Janopolan in Valencia, near the Sierra Bulones boundary. By April 17 the task force was poised to strike in Janopolan. The bulk of the Japanese force was destroyed and beaten in the 10 days of action. Bohol was officially declared liberated on May 25, 1945, by Major General William H. Arnold, commander of the Americal Division. About this time, most officers and men of the Bohol Area Command had been processed by units of the 8th United States Army. On May 31, 1945, the Bohol Area Command was officially deactivated upon orders of Lieutenant General Robert L. Eichelberger, commanding general of the 8th United States Army, together with the regular and constable troops of the Philippine Commonwealth Army, Philippine Constabulary, and the Boholano guerrillas. During the Second Battle of Bohol from March to August 1945, Filipino troops of the 3rd, 8th, 83rd, 85th and 86th Infantry Division of the Philippine Commonwealth Army and 8th Constabulary Regiment of the Philippine Constabulary captured and liberated the island province of Bohol and helped the Boholano guerrilla fighters and U.S. Liberation Forces defeat the Japanese Imperial Forces under General Sosaku Suzuki. After the death of President Ramon Magsaysay, Vice President Carlos P. Garcia, who had been born in Taliban, succeeded to the presidency. He won a full term in the 1957 presidential election. He ran for a second full term as president in the 1961 presidential election and was defeated by Vice President Diosdado Macapagal. In 1965, after a number of attempts to convert Tagbilaran into a city, the three congressmen of Bohol sponsored the bill to which would become Republic Act 4660, creating the city charter of Tagbilaran on June 18, 1966. Marcos dictatorship. Main articles: Martial law under Ferdinand Marcos, human rights abuses of the Marcos dictatorship, and economic history of the Philippines during the Marcos dictatorship. The Philippines' gradual post-war recovery took a turn for the worse in the late 1960s and early 1970s, with the 1969 Philippine balance of payments crisis being one of the early landmark events. 38. Economic analysts generally attribute this to the ramp-up on loan-funded government spending to promote Ferdinand Marcos's 1969 re-election campaign. 38, 39, 40. Although Marcos blamed the unrest on the 1968 formation of the Communist Party of the Philippines in an effort to earn political and military support from the zealously anti-communist Nixon and Ford administrations in the U.S. 41, 43, 42, 43. In Bohol, which had been marked by agricultural self-sufficiency 44, and unusually egalitarian set of social norms for landholding patterns 45 until then, these economic shocks were worsened by rapid population growth and declining rice yields. The introduction of intensive rice agriculture in the uplands led to large-scale deforestation, which then led to the loss of water for rice fields in the lowlands. 44. Cases of land usurpation began rising, which then degraded the relationships between landowners and tenants. 45. In 1972, 1 year before the expected end of his last constitutionally allowed term as president in 1973, Ferdinand Marcos placed the Philippines under martial law. 46. This allowed Marcos to remain in power for 14 more years, during which Bohol went through many social and economic ups and downs. 46. The economic difficulties, paired with crony capitalism and personal expensive lifestyles of the Marcos family, resulted in disillusionment. 46. And when protests were met with warrantless detentions and human rights abuses, many oppositionists who had previously held moderate positions, i.e., calling for legislative reforms, became convinced that they had no choice but to call for more radical social change. 47, 48. The activities of the Marcos administration had mythologized the CPP's New People Army, NPA, so many of the radicalized protesters reacted by joining the NPA. 41, 43. By 1981, NPA activities had begun to be noted in the upland areas of Sevilla, Bilar, Butuan, and Balilahan. 45. During this time, Camp Daguhoy and Tagbilaran functioned as one of many detention centers during the Marcos dictatorship, under the ambit of Regional Command for Detainees 3, RECAD 3, at Camp Lapu-Lapu in Cebu City. Among those detainees of Camp Daguhoy was the 19-year-old brother of Judge Maynrado Paredes, who was beaten with firearms so that he eventually suffered permanent damage to his hearing. 49. The immediate government response to the NPA presence was an integrated social, economic, cultural, and political program, which also saw the deployment of a special action force to the island in 1985. But conflict continued and even intensified through the 1980s and 1990s. 45. The government was only able to declare Bohol NPA free in the 2010s, after the success of an effort termed the Bohol Model, which saw military action play a secondary role while highlighting the civil government's provision of services which addressed local poverty and other root causes of community discontent. 50-51. At 8:12 a.m. PST, on October 15, 2013, the island province suffered a severe earthquake with a magnitude of 7.2 on the Richter scale. 52. Its epicenter was at 9 degrees 52 minutes north, 124 degrees 4 minutes east, 6 kilometers, 3.7 miles, south, 24 degrees west of Sagbayan, and 629 kilometers, 391 miles, from Manila, and its depth of focus was 12 kilometers, 7.5 miles. The quake was felt as far as Davao City, Mindanao. According to official reports by the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, NDRMC, 57 people died in Bohol, and 104 were injured. The North Bohol Fault, or Great Wall of Bohol, is a reverse fault was discovered on 15 October 2013 during the 2013 Bohol earthquake. It became one of the tourist attractions in Bohol Province. 53. It was the deadliest earthquake in the Philippines since the 7.8 magnitude 1990 Luzon earthquake. 54. Earlier that same year, Bohol was struck by an earthquake on February 8, 1990, with an epicenter almost exactly the same as in 2013, 55, causing 6 fatalities and 200 injured. Several buildings were damaged and it caused a tsunami. 56. 2017 militant incursion. On April 12, 2017, 11 Abu Sayyaf Group, ASG, militants staged an attack on Bohol. 3 soldiers, a police officer, and at least 4 of the armed men, including their leader Abu Rami, were killed in the clashes that started at 5 a.m. Also killed were 2 Inabenga villagers, though it was not clear whether they were killed in the crossfire or executed by the cornered militants. Security officials hunted down the remainder of the ASG who landed in Bohol from the hinterlands to a neighboring island in the province, which ultimately led to the neutralization of Abu Asis, the last of the remaining bandits, in May. He was gunned down by police special weapons and tactics operatives in Barangay Laos, Calip, while fighting it out to the end along with Ubeda. All 11 ASG members killed in the intrusion were given proper burials under Muslim tradition. 57, 58, 59. The tourism industry in Bohol was negatively affected by the ASG militants' incursion on the island. 60, 61. Though tour operators believe the industry can recover. 62, 63. 2023 UNESCO recognition. The United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization on May 24, 2023, added Bohol as one of the 18 new sites, and the Philippines country's first, in its Global Geoparks network. The United Nations cites geoparks as single, unified geographical areas where sites and landscapes have international geological significance, and to also be managed with a holistic concept of protection, education, and sustainable development, UNESCO said. 64. Bohol as a UNESCO Global Geopark covers 8,808 square kilometers of land surrounding lush marine protected areas. It features wondrous, not yet popular karstic geosites like caves, sinkholes, among others. UNESCO cited Bohol Islands for 100 years of rich history and cultural traditions in harmony with its unique geological treasures. 65, 66. Some of the sites highlighted in UNESCO Global Geopark are the following: Dana John Bank Double Barrier Reef, Alicia Panoramic Park, Princess Mananaw Cave, Canamantad Falls, Loon Coastal Geomorphic Conservation Park, Maribajok Uplifted Marine Terrace, the Clayan Marine Terraces, Hinagdanan Cave, Canoa Cold Spring, Cave Pools of Anda, Lamanok Island, and Batungay. The Chocolate Hills of Bohol. To the west of Bohol is Cebu, to the northeast is the island of Leyte, and to the south, across the Bohol Sea, is Mindanao. The Cebu Strait separates Bohol from Cebu, and both island provinces share a common language, but Boholano retains a conscious distinction from Cebuano. Bohol's climate is generally dry, with maximum rainfall between the months of June and October. The interior is cooler than the coast. 67. Physical features. With a land area of 4,821 square kilometers, 1,861 square miles, and a coastline 261 kilometers, 162 miles long, Bohol is the 10th largest island of the Philippines. The main island is surrounded by about 70 smaller islands, the largest of which are Panglao Island, facing Tagbilaran, in the southwest, and Lapanig Island in the northeast. The terrain of Bohol is basically rolling and hilly, and about half the island is covered in limestone. Near the outer areas of the island are low mountain ranges. The interior is a large plateau with irregular landforms. Near Carmen, the Chocolate Hills are more than 1,200 uniformly cone-shaped hills named for the grass growing on the hills that turns brown in the summer, making the landscape look like chocolate mounds. They are hills made of limestone left over from coral reefs during the Ice Age when the island was submerged. The Chocolate Hills are considered one of Philippines' natural wonders, and Bohol is often referred to as the jewel of the Philippines. They appear on the provincial seal of Bohol. Bohol has 114 springs, 172 creeks, and 4 main rivers that run through Bohol with a radial drainage pattern. 68. The largest river, the Inabanga, runs in the northwestern part of the province. The Lobok River drains the center of the island to the mid-southern coast. The Abaton River runs in the southwest, and Ipil River in the north. The only natural lake in the province is Caballeo Island Lake, also called Lake Danao or Lanao, on Caballeo Island. 69. Numerous waterfalls and caves are scattered across the island, including Magaso Falls in Antequera. Magaso means smoke in the native tongue. The water is cool and often creates a mist in humid mornings which can hide the falls. The Raja Sikatuna protected landscape protects Bohol's largest remaining lowland forest and can be found in the island's southern portion near Bilar. In 1996, the Philippine Tarsier Foundation was established in Karela, Bohol in efforts to help conserve and protect tarsiers and their habitat. Forest and habitat sanctuaries have been created to ensure the safety of tarsiers while allowing visitors to roam and discover these miniature primates in their natural habitats. The tarsier is the smallest living primate and exists in several Southeast Asian countries today. The Philippine tarsier, Tarsius sericta, locally known as mammoth in Boholano, is near to threatened according to the IUCN Red List of Endangered Species. 70. Adaptation to their large bulging eyes allows them to catch prey clearly at night. And with elongated limbs and fingers, leaping from tree to tree gives no limitation to the tarsier. 71. Their brain is about the same size as their eyes. The connection between its eyes and brain serves a unique function to these animals, which is important for their stability and balance. 72. Tarsiers have incredible hearing abilities. They can hear a frequency of up to 91 kilohertz, and send sounds of 70 kilohertz. 73. Climate. From November to April, the northeast monsoon, Amihan, prevails. Except for a rare shower, this is the mildest time of the year. Daytime temperatures average 28 degrees Celsius (82 degrees Fahrenheit), cooling at night to around 25 degrees Celsius (77 degrees Fahrenheit). The summer season from May to July brings higher temperatures and very humid days. From August to October is the southwest monsoon, Habagat. The weather during this season is not very predictable, with weeks of calm weather alternating with rainy days. It can rain any day of the year, but a higher chance of heavy showers occurs from November to January. Geologic formation. Icon. This section does not cite any sources. Please help improve this section by adding citations to reliable sources. Unsourced material may be challenged and removed. June 2022, learn how and when to remove this message. The formation of the island of Bohol began during the late Jurassic period, about 160 to 145 million years ago. It was still submerged except for what is now Mt. Malabalabad in Ubi and its adjacent area in Alicia of Bohol. Approximately 66 million years ago, at the end of the Cretaceous period, the northern portion of the island began to rise gradually. Volcanic activity during the time caused the deposition of numerous layers of volcanic rock in the region. Land mass increased and grew at the beginning of the Paleogene period, about 60 million years ago. During this period, diorite, a form of igneous rock, was introduced into the Talavon area. Between the Eocene and Oligocene epochs, the island's development was halted for millions of years. At the beginning of the Miocene epoch, about 23 million years ago, the island's geologic evolution continued. The combination of uplift and volcanism resulted in the deposition of limestone and the expulsion of andesite, a form of volcanic rock. Only the eastern half of the island was above water during this time. Approximately 5 million years ago, the southeastern portion of the island began to emerge from the ocean. From the late Pliocene to the Pleistocene, approximately 3.6 to 1.8 million years ago, the rest of the once submerged portion of the island of Bohol rose to the surface, giving the island its present form. Boholano people, a distinct ethnic subgroup of Cebuano, comprise the majority of Bohol with many residents in southern Leyte and northern parts of Mindanao. Escayans, a distinct ethnic group also native in Bohol, are residents of the forest hinterland interior of the southeastern municipalities of Duera, Guindulman, Pilar, and Sierra Bolans. Residing sizably in the province are the non-natives that include Cebuanos, from the northeast, Bichuanons, Saragonan, both from the Caraga in Mindanao, Hiligaynon, Ilocanos, from Panay, Negros Occidental and Ilocandia respectively, either directly or via Mindanao where they also both significantly reside, and Waris, from eastern Visayas. Languages. Majority of Boholano residents speak Bohol Cebuano, a dialect of Cebuano native to the province. It also has speakers in southern Leyte and in northern parts of Mindanao. Boholanos can also speak and understand standard Cebuano. Tagalog and English are mainly used for business, government affairs, and in local academe. Escayans has an artificial language of their own of the same name with its own alphabet. It is considered endangered language, leading to efforts to preserve the language by volunteers within the Escayan community to teach it to younger fellow Escayans. Bichuanon, Saragonan, Hiligaynon, Ilocano, and Wari are also spoken varyingly in the province. The Lobak River Cruise is one of the popular tourist attractions in the island. Tourism plays an increasing role in the island's economy. The Bohol Pala International Airport is active since 2018 for domestic flights and international flights since 2023. The airport houses the most visited and accessible beaches in the province. Proponents of the scheme hope that the new airport will increase Bohol's reputation as an international tourist destination, although the plan has been dogged by ongoing criticism. 84. Scuba diving and free diving are among Bohol's tourism industry driving forces. Panglo is the leader with more than 70 Panglo scuba diving centers and freediving operators due to its numerous dive sites, including Pamalacan. The municipality of Dais is a second runner in the province, with many diving facilities directed to Pamalacan and Napaling. Anda and Caballeo also show some prominence in growing the diving industry in Bohol. Due to rapid growth, private and public regulatory organizations are protecting the marine environment from man-made damages. 85. Other than its growing tourism industry, Bohol has also been an emerging business process outsourcing (BPO) hub and has fostered over 4 BPO firms in the province, with worldwide BPO companies such as Sagility, Genpact, Taskus, and Ibex Global, most of which are sited in Tagbilaran City, the province's capital and largest city. 86, 87 in 2023, industries such as agriculture, forestry, and fishery surged with a 7.1% growth rate. 88, other industries such as services, accommodation and food services and transportation and storage also grew substantially. 89. Sunset at Tagbilaran Seaport. Port of Tubigan, the busiest among the smaller ports, offers more than 10 daily round trips plying the Cebu-Bohol route, including fastcraft and roll-on/roll-off. Cadig Bacon Port in Lune serves the roll-on/roll-off services between Tuargao and Sabanga in Cebu. Port of Jagna offers service between Bohol to Opal, Cagayan de Oro, Camagan, Balbagon and Benoni, and Nazapitwith with roll-on/roll-off routes. The Port of Ubi is the province's gateway to eastern Visayas, which offers round trips to Bato, Hilonos, and Mason City. It also offers daily round trips to Cebu City. The second port of Ubi, the Tapal Wharf, located in Barangay Tapal, caters for the daily President Carlos P. Garcia Bohol mainland routes. The ports of Buena Vista, Clarin, Hedafe, and Talibon also offer daily round trips to Cebu. Other known commercial passenger seaports are located in Baclayan, Unido, and President Carlos P. Garcia. Bohol has 2 major AM radio stations, DYRD and DYDR, both based in Tagbilaran City. Another AM radio station, DYZD, based in Ubi, is being operated by DYRD. Both DYRD and DYDR also operate FM stations with the same names. There are multiple weekly or twice-weekly newspapers like Bohol Tribune, formerly Sunday Post, Bohol Times, Bohol Standard and Bohol Bante Balita. These days, Bohol Chronicle is now a daily paper. An online news website called Bohol News Daily aggregates news from various sources. Ida, Ida, Eyet, Agta, and Dumagat are collective terms for several indigenous peoples who live in various parts of Luzon Islands in the Philippines. They are included in the wider Negrito grouping of South and Southeast Asia, with whom they share superficial common physical characteristics such as dark skin tones, short statures, frizzy to curly hair, and a higher frequency of naturally lighter hair color, blondism, relative to the general population. They are thought to be among the earliest inhabitants of the Philippines, preceding the Austronesian migrations. 2, 3 Regardless, the modern Ida populations have significant Austronesian admixture and speak Austronesian languages. 4. Ida communities were historically nomadic hunter-gatherers, typically consisting of approximately 1 to 5 families per mobile group. 5. Groups under the Ida umbrella term are normally referred to after their geographic locations or their common languages. The endonyms of most of the various Ida peoples are derived from Proto-Malayo-Polynesian *a, r, ta, also reconstructed as *kata or *gata, meaning dark-skinned person. This is in contrast to the other terms for person in other Philippine and Oceanian groups derived from Proto-Malayo-Polynesian *tau, e.g. Tagalog Tau, which refers to lighter skin groups with majority Austronesian descent. Lawrence A. Reed wrote that *a, r, ta may have originally been the Negrito word for person in northern Luzon, but was adopted into Austronesian languages with the meaning of dark-skinned person after the arrival of Austronesian migrants to the Philippines from Taiwan. A common folk etymology is that the name Ida is derived from item or item meaning black, but this is incorrect. 6.10. The term Dumagat or Dumaget is an exonym meaning people from Maygat River. The Luzon Dumagats are not to be confused with the etymology of the Visayan Dumagat, see people, from the root word dagat, see who dwell in the coastal areas of Mindanao, contrasting them from inland Lomat. 6. Other exonyms of the Ida are more derogatory. These include beluga, half-breed, and puget, headhunter. 6.11. The Ida themselves call non-Negrito groups with various names that reflect their ancient relationships with Austronesians. These include names like Ugsin, Ogden, Ogden or Olden, red, puty or pute, white, unat, straight-haired, or Agani, rice, harvester. 6. Ida, also Ada, Ida, Ida, Alta, Arda, Ada, or Acta, is a collective term. Although commonly thought of as a single group, it is in reality composed of several ethnic groups that share similar hunter-gatherer lifestyles and physical features. They are usually divided into 3 main groups: the Ida from central Luzon, the Agta of southeastern Luzon, and the Dumagat, also spelled Dumaget, of eastern Luzon. These divisions, however, are arbitrary, and the 3 names can be used interchangeably. They are also commonly confused with the Adi people of the Visayas Islands. Idas, as illustrated in Carta Hydrográfica y Coreográfica de las Islas Filipinas, 1734. The caption in Spanish describes them as wild men of the mountains. The genetic relationship of Philippine Negritos, Ida, Agta, A, neighbor joining tree constructed from Nay's standard genetic distance. V. Maximum likelihood tree generated using tree mix. This tree shows that following the split from Europeans, the Papuans/Melanesians split from Andamanese, Malaysian, and Philippine Negritos, which all appear basal to other Southeast and East Asian populations, in that branching order. 13. The Ida people in the Philippines are generally grouped together with the wider Negrito population cluster of Southeast Asia, such as the Semang on the Malay Peninsula, or the Andamanese people. The Philippine Negritos display relatively closer genetic affinity towards different Eastern Asian populations, prehistoric Hoabinhian samples, as well as to the indigenous people of New Guinea and Aboriginal Australians, from which they diverged around c. 40,000 years ago. They also display an internal genetic substructure along a north to south cline, suggesting their ancestral population diverged into two subgroups after the initial peopling of the Philippines. Furthermore, they display high percentages of Denisovan gene flow, 14-15. An Ida man with scarified tattoos, c. 1885. The Ida are the descendants of the same early East Eurasian metapopulation, which also gave rise to modern East Asians and Australasians, among other populations of the Asia-Pacific region. The earliest modern human migrations into the Philippine Islands were during the Paleolithic, around 40,000 years ago, followed by two other migration waves between 25,000 and 12,000 years ago, through the Sundaland land bridges that linked the islands with the Asian mainland. The latest migration wave is associated with the Austronesian peoples, c. 7,000 years ago, from Taiwan, 14, 15, 16. Philippine Negritos furthermore display craniometric and dental affinities, Sundadonti, with various Southern East Asian and Japanese populations, suggesting deep ancestral ties, 17. Many modern Ida display significant Austronesian admixture, 10% to 30%, due to population contact and mixing after the arrival of Austronesians. The modern Ida speak Austronesian languages, although with a high number of non-Austronesian vocabulary, and follow a syncretic cultural practices, incorporating many Austronesian elements into their traditional culture. Conversely, other Austronesian Filipino ethnic groups, not traditionally considered Negritos, also have Negrito admixture, 10 to 20%, highlighting mutual contact and influence. Idas are most closely related to the Batak people of Palawan. A recent study in 2021 analyzing archaic ancestry in 118 Philippine ethnic groups discovered an independent admixture event into Philippine Negritos from Denisovans. The Ada Magbukan in particular were found to possess the highest level of Denisovan ancestry in the world, between 3 and 9%, which is about 30%, 40% higher than the amount observed among Australo-Papuans, suggesting that distinct islander Denisovan populations existed in the Philippines, which had mixed with modern humans after their arrival. At the same time, Central Luzon Negritos such as the Ada Madbukan and Ada Umbola were also found to have the least amount of Austronesian-derived ancestry of all sampled Philippine ethnic groups, at 10%, 20%. Unlike many other Filipino ethnic groups, the Idas have shown resistance to change. Idas had little interaction with the Spaniards as they remained in the mountains during the Spanish rule. Even the attempts of the Spaniards to settle them in reductions or reservations failed all throughout Spanish rule. According to Spanish observers like Miguel López de Legazpi, Negritos possessed iron tools and weapons. Their speed and accuracy with the bow and arrow were proverbial, and they were fearsome warriors. Unwary travelers or field workers were often easy targets. Despite their martial prowess, however, the Ida's small numbers, primitive economy, and lack of organization often made them easy prey for better organized groups. Zambals seeking people to enslave would often take advantage of their internal feuding. They were often enslaved and sold to Borneo and China, and, unlike the serf feudal system, alipin, imposed on other Filipinos, there was little chance of manumission. The Katipunan lit. Association, officially known as the Katastasan Kagalangalang Katipunan ng Mga Anaking Bayan 6, 7, 8, a lit. Supreme and Venerable Association of the Children of the Nation Spanish, Suprema y Venerable Asociación de los Hijos del Pueblo, and abbreviated as the KKK, was a revolutionary organization founded in 1892 by a group of Filipino nationalists Deodato Arellano, Andres Bonifacio, Valentin Diaz, Ladislao Diwa, Jose Dizon, and Teodoro Plata. Its primary objective was achieving independence from the Spanish Empire through an armed revolution. It was formed as a secret society before its eventual discovery by Spanish authorities in August 1896. This discovery led to the start of the Philippine Revolution. Historians generally place the date of its founding in July 1892, shortly after the arrest and deportation of Filipino author and nationalist Jose Rizal to Dapitan in Mindanao. Rizal was one of the founders of the nascent La Liga Filipina, which aimed for a Filipino representation to the Spanish Parliament. Many members of the Katipunan, including Bonifacio himself, were members of that organization. However, recent discovery of documents of the organization suggest that the Katipunan may have been around by January 1892 but became active by July 9. Being originally formed as a secret society, the Katipunan had its members undergo through initiation rites similar to Freemasonry. 10. Membership to the organization was initially open only to men. However, women were eventually accepted. The Katipunan had a short-lived publication, Kalayaan lit. Freedom, which only saw printing in March 1896. During its existence, revolutionary ideals and works flourished, and Filipino literature was expanded by some of its prominent members. Existing documents suggest that the Katipunan had planned for an armed revolution since its founding and initially sought support from Filipino intellectuals. In one such incident, Bonifacio planned a rescue for the deported José Rizal in Dapitan in exchange for his support to the revolution, to which Rizal refused. An attempt to secure firearms from a visiting Japanese warship in May 1896 failed to gain anything. 11. In August of that year, Spanish authorities in Manila discovered the organization. Days after, the Katipunan, led by Bonifacio, openly declared war to the Spanish government, starting a 3-year-long revolution, which marked the beginning of the creation of the nation of the Philippines. Etymology. The name Katipunan is a short name for Katastasasang, Kagalangalang na Katipunan ng Mga Anaking Bayan 1 Supreme and Venerable Society of the Children of the Nation. The Tagalog word Katipunan, literally, association, gathering, assemblage, or group 12-13, comes from the root word taipon, a Tagalog word meaning gathering, or to gather. 14. Formation. Further information, La Liga Filipina and Propaganda Movement. Prominent leaders of the propaganda movement in Spain, from left to right, José Rizal, Marcelo H. del Pilar and Mariano Ponce. The Katipunan was formed in 1892 by Filipino nationalists Deodato Arellano, Teodoro Plata, Valentin Diaz, Ladislao Diwa, Andres Bonifacio, and José Dizon. It was one of the two groups that was formed after the dissolution of the nascent La Liga Filipina, a nationalist organization formed by Filipino writer José Rizal and members of the propaganda movement in Spain, following Rizal's arrest and deportation to Dapitan in Mindanao. Most of the Katipunan's early members were also members of La Liga. 15. However, while La Liga advocated for a Filipino representation in the Spanish Parliament, Katipunan's goal was for the archipelago to achieve independence through an armed revolution. Its founders saw that any move for Filipino autonomy from within Spain would be suppressed by colonial Spanish authorities. 8. The other group, Cuerpo de Compromisarios, argued for a peaceful reformation instead. While fundamentally different in their views, the Katipunan decided to name Rizal as their honorary president. 16. Rizal's status was so prominent within the organization that Rizal was one of the passwords of the group alongside Gomborza, a trio of Filipino priests executed in Bagumbayan in 1872, the wake of the Cavite Mutiny. National Historical Marker installed in 2008 at the vicinity of the founding site. Modern historical consensus generally places Katipunan's formation on the night of July 7, 1892, following Rizal's arrest. It was formed in secrecy on a house in Azcaraga Street, now Recto Avenue, in San Nicolas, Manila, 1819. However, it may have been formed on paper as early as January of the same year based on recent documents discovered in the 21st century. The organization was originally formed as a secret society following Freemasonic practices, such as its initiation rites and its organizational structure. This may have come from the fact that many of its early members were Freemasons themselves. While not directly involved in the organization, prominent Filipino Freemason Marcelo H. del Pilar may have influenced the group. 20. Del Pilar is also said to have approved the Katipunan statutes. Filipino historian Epifanio de los Santos, in the 1920s noted, it is very correctly stated that Andres Bonifacio ordered Teodoro Plata to draw up the statutes of the Katipunan, and that he did this with the aid of Ladislao Diwa and Valentin Diaz. After the statutes had been discussed, Bonifacio, with the concurrence of Deodato Arellano, submitted them to Marcelo H. del Pilar for approval. Upon the latter's letter approving the statutes, Bonifacio used the same for the purpose of gaining adepts. 21. The Katipunan was governed by the Supreme Council, Tagalog, Katastasan Sanggunian. 22. The first Supreme Council of the Katipunan was formed around August 1892, a month after the founding of the society. The Supreme Council was headed by an elected president, Pangulo, followed by the secretary/secretaries, Kalihim, the treasurer, Tagangatyaman, and the fiscal, Tagausig. 23. The Supreme Council also had its councillors, Kasinguni. The number varied through presidencies. 23. To distinguish from presidents of lower Sanggunian or councils, below, the president of the Supreme Council was called the Supreme President, Tagalog, Katastasan Pangulo, Spanish, Presidente Supremo. 24. At the outbreak of the 1896 revolution, the council was further reorganized into a cabinet, which the Katipunan regarded as a genuine revolutionary government, de facto and de jure. 25. In each province where there were Katipunan members, a provincial council called Sangguniang Bayan was established, and in each town was an organized popular council called Sangguniang Barangay. Each bayan and barangay had its own set of elected officials: Pangulo, president; Kalihim, secretary; Tagausig, fiscal; Tagangatyaman, treasurer; Pangalawang Pangulo, vice president; Pangalawang Kalihim, vice secretary; Nga Kasinguni, councillors; Mabalasig, terrible brother; Talaba, guard; Mananangel, collector/auditor; Tagapamahala ng Basahan ng Bayan, custodian of the People's Library; Tagapangasawa, administrator; Manunulat, clerk; Tagachalan sa Pagsalat, assistant clerk; Tagalan, warden; and Tagalibat, patroller. 23. Each barangay was given a chance to expand their own spheres of influence through the triangle system in order to elevate their status to Sangguniang Bayan. 23. Every barangay that did not gain Sangguniang Bayan status was dissolved and annexed by greater provincial or popular councils. 23. The towns/cities which supported the Katipunan cause were given symbolic names, such as Magdawang, to celebrate; for Novelita; Magdalo, to come; for Coit; Magwaji, to win; for Naik; Magtagumpay, to succeed; for Maragondon; Walantanag, never diminished; for Indang and Halig; Wal, for Imus. All are in the province of Cavite. 26. Within the society functioned a secret chamber, called Camara Reina. 27, which was presided over by Bonifacio, Jacinto, and Pio Valenzuela. This mysterious chamber passed judgment upon those who had betrayed their oath and those accused of certain offenses penalized by Katipunan laws. Every Katipunero stood in fearful awe of this chamber. According to Jose P. Santos, throughout the existence of the secret chamber, about 5 Katipuneros were convicted and sentenced to die by it. The death sentence was handed down in the figure of a cup with a serpent coiled around it. 28. History of administration. Icon. This section needs additional citations for verification. Please help improve this article by adding citations to reliable sources in this section. Unsourced material may be challenged and removed. July 2017. Learn how and when to remove this message. Part of a series on the history of the Philippines. In 1892, after the Katipunan was founded, the members of the Supreme Council consisted of Arellano as president, Bonifacio as comptroller, Diwa as fiscal, Plata as secretary, and Diaz as treasurer. 29. In 1893, the Supreme Council comprised Ramon Basa as president, Bonifacio as fiscal, Jose Turiano Santiago as secretary, Vicente Molina as treasurer, and Restituto Javier, Bricho Pantas, Teodoro Gonzalez. Gonzalez, Plata, and Diwa were councillors. 29. It was during Basa's term that the society organized a women's auxiliary section. Two of its initial members were Gregoria de Jesus, whom Bonifacio had just married, and Marina Dizon, daughter of José Dizon. It was also in 1893 when Bassa and Diwa organized the Provincial Council of Covida, which would later be the most successful council of the society. The Filipino scholar Maximo Calao reports that Bassa yielded the presidency to Bonifacio in 1894 because of a dispute over the usefulness of the initiation rites and Bonifacio's handling of the society's funds. Bassa contested Bonifacio's practice of lending their funds to needy members, complete with promissory notes. 30-31. Moreover, Bassa refused to induct his son into the organization. It was also in 1894 when Emilio Jacinto, a nephew of Dizon who was studying law at the University of Santo Tomas, joined the Katipunan. He intellectualized the society's aims and formulated the principles of the society as embodied in its primer, called Cartilla. It was written in Tagalog and all recruits were required to commit it to heart before they were initiated. Jacinto would later be called the brains of the Katipunan. At the same time, Jacinto also edited Kalayaan, Freedom, the society's official organ, but only one edition of the paper was issued. A second was prepared but never printed due to the discovery of the society. Kalayaan was published through the printing press of the Spanish newspaper Diario de Manila. This printing press and its workers would later play an important role in the outbreak of the revolution. In 1895, José Turiano Santiago, a close personal friend of Bonifacio, was expelled because a coded message from the Katipunan fell into the hands of a Spanish priest teaching at the University of Santo Tomas. Since the priest was a friend of Santiago's sister, he and his half-brother Restituto Javier were suspected of betrayal. But the two would remain loyal to the Katipunan, and Santiago would even join the Philippine Revolutionary Forces in the Philippine-American War. Jacinto replaced Santiago as secretary. A Katipunan officer soared. In early 1895, Bonifacio called for a meeting of the society and deposed Bassa in an election that installed Bonifacio as president, Jacinto as fiscal, Santiago as secretary, Molina as secretary, Pio Valenzuela and Pantaleon Torres as physicians, and Aguila del Rosario and Doridio Trinidad as counselors. 32. On December 31, 1895, another election named Bonifacio as president, Jacinto as fiscal, Santiago as secretary, Molina as secretary, Pio Valenzuela and Pantaleon Torres as physicians, and Aguila del Rosario and Doridio Trinidad as counselors. 33. The members of the Supreme Council in 1895 were Bonifacio as president, Valenzuela as fiscal and physician, Jacinto as secretary, and Molina as treasurer. Enrico Pacheco, Pantaleon Torres, Balbino Florentino, Francisco Carrion, and Hermenegildo Reyes were named councilors. 33. 8 months later, in August 1896, the fifth and last Supreme Council was elected to rename offices. Bonifacio was named president, Jacinto as Secretary of State, Plata as Secretary of War, Brico Pantas as Secretary of Justice, Aguila del Rosario as Secretary of the Interior, and Enrico Pacheco as Secretary of Finance. 33. Members. A late 19th century photograph of armed Filipino revolutionaries, known as the Katipuneros. Over the next 4 years, the Katipunan founders would recruit new members. By the time the society was uncovered, the American writer James Leroy estimated the strength of the Katipunan at 100,000 to 400,000 members. 34. Historian Teodoro Agoncillo estimated that the membership had increased to around 30,000 by 1896. 35. The Ilocano writer Isabelo de los Reyes estimated membership at 15,000 to 50,000. Aside from Manila, the Katipunan also had sizable chapters in Batangas, Laguna, Cavite, Rizal, Bulacan, Pampanga, Tarlac, and Nueva Ecija. There were also smaller chapters in Ilocos Sur, Ilocos Norte, Pangasinan, and the Bicol region. The Katipunan founders spent their free time recruiting members. For example, Diwa, who was a clerk at a judicial court, was assigned to the office of a justice of the peace in Pampanga. He initiated members in that province as well as Bulacan, Tarlac, and Nueva Ecija. Most of the Katipuneros were plebeian, although several wealthy patriots joined the society and submitted themselves to the leadership of Bonifacio. Katipunero, plural, Nga Katipunero, is the demonym of a male member of the Katipunan. Katipunera, plural, Nga Katipunera, refers to female members. Triangle system and grades. 2 infographs depicting the ranks within the Katipunan and the triangle system of recruitment. It was the original plan of Bonifacio to increase the membership of the Katipunan by means of Sistmang Patatsalak, or the triangle system. He formed his first triangle with his 2 comrades, Teodoro Plata and Ladislao Diwa. Each of them reinstituted Katipunan thoughts into another 2 new converts. The founder of the triangle knew the other 2 members, but the latter did not know each other. In December 1892, the system was abolished after proving it to be clumsy and complicated. 36. A new system of initiation, modeled after the Masonic rites, was then adopted. 37. When the Katipuneros had expanded to more than 100 members, Bonifacio divided the members into 3 grades: the Katipon, literally, associate, which is the lowest rank, the Kawal, soldier, and the Vayani, hero or patriot. At the meeting of the society, Katipon wore a black hood with a triangle of white ribbon having the letters Z, LL, B, corresponding to the Roman A, N, B, meaning Anak Ingbayan, son of the people, see below. Kawal wore a green hood with a triangle having white lines and the letters Z, LL, B, at the 3 angles of the triangle, and also wore a green ribbon with a medal with the letter Ka in Baybayin script above a depiction of a cross, sword, and flag. The password was Gomburza, taken from the names of the 3 martyrs Mariano Gomez, Jose Burgos, and Jacinto Zamora. Bayani, hero, wore a red mask and a sash with green borders, symbolizing courage and hope. The front of the mask had white borders that formed a triangle with 3 KS arranged as if occupying the angles of a triangle within a triangle, and with the letters Z, LL, B below. Another password was Risal. Countersigns enabled members to recognize one another on the street. A member meeting another member placed the palm of his right hand on his breast and, as he passed the other member, he closed the hands to bring the right index finger and thumb together. 38. Inside the candlelit room, they would be brought to a table adorned with a skull and a biolo. There, they would condemn the abuses of the Spanish government and vow to fight colonial oppression. Frowny face 42-43. 1. Ano ang kalagayan nitong Katagayagan 44, Namanang Panahan? In what condition did the Spaniards find the Tagalog land when they came? Expected answer: when the Spaniards came to the Philippine shores on March 16, 1521, the Filipinos were already in a civilized state. They had freedom of government, they had artillery, they had silk dresses, they had carried on commerce with neighboring countries in Asia, they had their own religion and their own script. In short, they have liberty and independence. 2. Ano ang kalagayan sa gayon? In what condition do they find themselves now? Expected answer: the friars have not really civilized the Filipinos, since enlightenment was contrary to the friars' interests. The Filipinos, called Tagalogs by the Katipunan, were merely superficially taught formulas of catechism for which they eventually paid numerous costly fiestas for the benefit of the friars. 3. Ano ang magiging kalagayan sa darating na panahon? What hopes do they have for the future? Expected answer: with faith, valor, and perseverance, these evils will be remedied. During Bonifacio's time, all of the Filipino people are referred collectively by the Katipunan as Tagalogs, while the Philippines is referred to as the Katagaligan. 43. The next step in the initiation ceremony was the lecture given by the Master of Ceremonies, called Mabalasig/Mabalasik, Terrible Brother, who informed the neophyte to withdraw if he lacked courage, since he would be out of place in the patriotic society. If the neophyte persisted, he was presented to the assembly of the brethren, who subjected him to various ordeals such as blindfolding him and making him shoot supposedly a revolver at a person, or forcing him to jump over a supposedly hot flame. After the ordeals came to final rite, the Pacto de Sangre or Blood Compact, in which the neophyte signed the following oath with the blood taken from his arm. He was then accepted as a full-fledged member, with a symbolic name by which he was known within Katapunan circles. Bonifacio's symbolic name was Mapagasa, Jacinto was Pinkian, and Artemio Ricarut was Vibora. Admission of women to the society. At first, Katapunan was purely a patriotic society for men. Owing to the growing suspicion of the women regarding nocturnal absences of their husbands, the reduction of their monthly earnings, and long hours of work, Bonifacio had to bring them into the realms of the KKK. A section for women was established in the society. To become admitted, one must be a wife, a daughter, or a sister of a male Katapunero. It was estimated that from 20 to 50 women had become members of the society. 46. The first woman to become a member of the Katapunan was Gregoria de Jesus, wife of Bonifacio. 46. Her code name was La Cambini, Princess. 47. Initially, there were 29 women were admitted to the Katapunan. Gregoria de Jesus, Marina Dizon, president of the women's section, Josefa and Trinidad Rizal, sisters of Dr. Jose Rizal, Angelica Lopez and Delfina Herbosa Natividad, close relatives of Dr. Rizal, Carmen de Rodriguez, Marina Heisen, Benita Rodriguez, Simona de Remigio, Gregoria Montoya, Aguila, Cahabagan, Teresa Madbanua, Trinidad Texan, rendered as Mother of Bayagnabato, wink with a frown 48, Nizaria Lagos, Patrocinio Gamboa, Marcela Agancillo, Melchora Aquino, the Grand Old Woman of Balintuac, wink with a frown 48, Marta Saldana and Macaria Panalinon, 49. The women rendered valuable services to the Katapunan. 50. They guarded the secret papers and documents of the society. Whenever the Katapunan held sessions in a certain house, they usually made merry, singing and dancing with some of the men in the living room, so that the civil guard were led that there was nothing but a harmless social party within. 46. Though women are considered to be members of the Katapunan, information regarding the women's section was scarce and sometimes conflicting. 23. Teodoro Agancillo, for example, disregarded Marina Dizon and concluded that Josefa Rizal was the only president of the said section. 51. Gregorio Zaide, on the other hand, mentioned Dizon's presidency in his 1939 publication History of the Katapunan. 52. But changed his mind when he adopted Dr. Pio Valenzuela's notion that women members did not elect officers, hence there was no room for a president. 53. Foreign members of the Katapunan. Attracted by the universal appeal of the Katapunan's cartilla, several members who were not native Filipinos joined the Katapunan or, later, the Philippine Revolutionary Army, PRA, in the spirit of national liberation. Among the foreign-born Katapuneros were General Juan Calas, a half-Indian, from India, and French, 54, mestizo, General Jose Ignacio Paua, 55, a full-blooded Chinese. African-American PRA Captain David Fagan, who defected from the Americans to join the Filipinos due to his disgust of racism and imperialism, Captain Camillo Ricciardi, an Italian who joined the rebel Filipinos, and Vicente Catalan, a Cuban Criollo captain who became the first admiral of the Philippine Navy. 56. A large number of former Latin American officers in the Spanish Army from Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela, Peru, Chile, Argentina, and Costa Rica were dismissed in the context of the Andrés Novales uprising, one of the precursors of the Philippine Revolution. These Latin American-born officers moved to the Philippines to serve in the military and were allied with the revolutionaries. 57. There were also several Spanish and American defectors to the Philippine side during the Philippine War of Independence and the Philippine-American War. To add to these were the Japanese militants supporting the Katapunan and the First Republic, among which included Lieutenant Saburo Nakamori and Captain Chizuno Iwamoto, who served on President Emilio Aguinaldo's staff. 58. Nevertheless, there was friction between the Masons from the United States and France against the Masonic-associated Katapunan, as the first President of the United States, George Washington, 59, was once a Mason. but the nascent First Philippine Republic, which the Katipunan founded, went to war against the same Masonic-led United States in the Philippine-American War, and furthermore, the treaty which sealed the American invasion of the Philippines was concluded in the 1898 Treaty of Paris. 60. The Revolution and the Philippine-American War caused many deaths, but eventually, America granted the Philippines independence after World War II. Notable Katipuneros: Andres Bonifacio, 1863 to 1897, the leading founder and the third Supreme President, Kataztasan Pangulo, Presidente Supremo, of the Katipunan, later taking the title Pangulo ng Haring Bayang Katagaligan, President of the Sovereign Tagalog Nation. Haring Bayan was also translated as Republic, i.e. Republica ng Katagaligan, upon the start of the revolution. Emilio Aguinaldo, 1869 to 1964, first president of the First Philippine Republic, the Katipunan's successor. He was also a war general and one of the officers of the Magdalo chapter that led to a lot of notable victories for the Katipunan against Spain. During his presidency, he ordered the arrest and eventual execution of Andres and Procopio Bonifacio in 1897 after the trial. Emilio Jacinto, 1875 to 1899, called as the brains of the Katipunan. He wrote several papers during the revolution like the Cartilla Primer. Mariano Alvarez, 1818 to 1924, the president of the Magdiwang chapter and a war general, he was also Oriang's uncle. Baldomero Aguinaldo, 1818 to 1924, the president of the Magdalo chapter and a war general, he was also Emilio Aguinaldo's first. Ang Kalayaan redirects here. For other uses, see Kalayaan, disambiguation. The printing machine used by the First Philippine Republic, now the Casa Real Shrine, where the newspapers La Independencia, El Heraldo de la Revolucion, Kalayaan, and Kaibigan ng Bayan were printed. During the Japanese occupation, the Bulacan military area, under Captain Alejo Santos, used this machine against the Japanese. Kalayaan, Liberty/Freedom, was the official organ and newspaper of the Katipunan. It was first published March 1896, even though its masthead was dated January 1896. 70. The first Kalayaan issue has never been followed. In 1895, the Katipunan bought an old handpress with the money generously donated by two Visayan compatriots Francisco del Castillo and Candido Iban, who returned to the country after working as shell and pearl divers in Australia and had some money from a lottery win. 71. They bought the press and a small quantity of types from Antonio Salazar's Bazar del Cisne on Calle Carriedo, and Del Castillo transported it to the house of Andres Bonifacio in Santa Cruz, Manila. 70. On January 1, 1896, Valenzuela accepted the position as the Katipunan fiscal in exchange for Bonifacio's consent to send the printing press to his house in Calle de Lavazeres, San Nicolas, Manila, so that he could assist and edit a monthly publication which would be the Katipunan's main organ. 70. Bonifacio agreed, and on mid-January, the press was delivered in San Nicolas. The name Kalayaan was suggested by Dr. Pio Valenzuela, which was agreed both by Bonifacio and Emilio Jacinto. 68. Even though Valenzuela was chosen to become the editor of the organ, they all decided to use the name of Marcelo H. del Pilar as its editor. To fool the Spanish authorities, the Kalayaan was also decided to carry a false masthead stating that it was being printed in Yokohama, Japan. 72. That very same month, January 1896, the publication of Kalayaan began. Valenzuela expected to complete it by the end of the month, and so it was dated as such. 70. The existence of the press was kept in utmost secrecy. Under the supervision of Valenzuela, two printers, Faustino Duque, a student from Colegio de San Juan de Letran, and Ulpiano Fernandez, a part-time printer at El Comercio, printed the revolutionary literature of the Society and Kalayaan. When Valenzuela was appointed Physician General of the Katipunan, he passed on his editorial duties to Jacinto. Jacinto edited the articles after his pre-law classes in University of Santo Tomas. Since the press was in the old orthography and not in the new Germanized alphabet, as called by the Spaniards, there were no Tagalog letters such as K, W, H, and Y. To solve this problem, Jacinto obliged his mother, Josefa Dizon, to buy typefaces that resembled such letters. 70. The typefaces used in its printing were purchased from publisher Isabelo de los Reyes, but many were taken surreptitiously from the presses of the Diario de Manila by Filipino employees who were also members of the Katipunan. 72. According to Valenzuela, the printing process was so laborious that setting up 8 pages required 2 months to complete. 70. For weeks, Jacinto, Duque and Fernandez, and sometimes Valenzuela, took turns in preparing the pages of the Calayan, which were approximately 9 by 12 inches in size. 68. In March 1896, the first copies of the January 1896 issue were secretly circulated with about 2,000 copies, according to Valenzuela. 73. According to Epifanio de los Santos, only 1,000 copies were printed, 700 were distributed by Bonifacio, 300 by Aguinaldo, and some 100 by Valenzuela himself. 70. 74. The first issue contained a supposed editorial done by Del Pilar, which, in fact, was done by Jacinto himself. It also included Bonifacio's Pag-ibig essay to Nubuang Lupa, Valenzuela's Katuran, and several works that exposed Spanish abuses and promoted patriotism. 68. Copies spread to nearby Manila provinces, including Cavite, Morong, now Rizal, Caloocan, and Malabon. Surprised by this initial success, Jacinto decided to print a second issue that would contain nothing but his work. 68. In August 1896, the second issue was prepared. It was during this time that Spanish authorities began to grow wary of anti-government activities and, suspecting the existence of a subversive periodical in circulation, see below, raided the place where Calayan was being printed. At number 6 Covell Street, San Nicolas, Manila. 68. Fortunately, the printers Duque and Fernandez were warned in time, destroyed the incriminating molds and escaped. Therefore, Spanish authorities never found any evidence of the Calayan.